Hello everyone, in this tutorial we're building this admin dashboard in React, and some of the concepts you're gonna learn, or if you already know them, refresh your memory on in this tutorial will be context API and state management. Also, we'll go over how to do layouts, theming, then we're gonna build some charts like the ones you see on the screen, and we'll also at the end add like light and dark mode, and also we have routing configured and responsive menu. So let's get started. So for this project, we will use Vite instead of the traditional create React app. And let's go ahead, copy the command to create project from their website, and I create a folder in which I want my project to be. So I'm gonna paste it into that folder. So the reason we're using Vite is because it has a faster startup times for development. So in here, it's gonna ask you if you don't have the package for Vite, you can go ahead and install and put in the project name. And then, so the create React app works that it bundles up the whole application together versus Vite just like transpose modules on demand. So we selected React and then JavaScript. Let's cd into the project. And before we run npm install as it's telling us to, make sure to click the gist in my description and copy package.json exactly as I have it. This will ensure you have all the packages installed and the same versions as is used in this tutorial, so that there's no discrepancies between versions and you don't spend time, installing on those packages. Now let's run npm install. This will take a minute. Okay, now that we have all the modules installed, let's briefly go over what we're using. So for the icons, we have font us, Apex charts for displaying charts, also Bootstrap for styling, and instead of CSS, we're going to use Sass. Then we have React packages, React router that's used for routing and creating pages, React table for our tables, and React Strap, which is a UI library that's built on top of Bootstrap. And that's it. Okay, now we can run our application by using command npm run dev. And this will start our application in this like route. So let's do command click. And here it is. Okay, now let's get started with coding. So first we'll set up some styling, and then we're going to move on to building components and then styling them along the way. For styling, I'll store all our styles in source folder. We have assets, and in assets, let's create a new folder, name it CSS. And in here, I'll create two files. First one would be app.sass, so that file would contain all the main style links, and then another one would be our variables file. So variables that here we'll store all the variables, and then we're gonna reuse them all along our application, which is very convenient. Also, as I mentioned, we'll be using Bootstrap for this project, and we have to set Bootstrap up, but also it comes with its own classes, themes, and colors, and we'll customize some of the colors. And to do that, let's first import Bootstrap packages that we'll need in our variables.css, and then all the customization needs to happen before importing like this main Bootstrap file. So in here, let's start off with simple example. For example, body background, and we'll give it a color. And let's save this one. After, we'll import them in our app CSS so we can use them here. And then finally, always when adding styling classes, we have to import them in our JSX part. So in app.jsx, that's the main application. In here, let's do import. So this would be assets. And let's define at least one styling so we can check if it's getting loaded or not. So for body, Let's give it background color and body background. Okay, now let's check if styles are loading. So the background color of this by default was black, so it did get updated. Now let's remove, there's some more default like styling when we created the application here. So I'm gonna select all of them by pressing Command A and delete them. Okay, let's start by creating our first component. So to do that, we also have to create a new page where we're gonna place this component. So I'm going to create pages folder in the root of our project. Oh, I have to move because I have other project folders here in my VS Code. Okay, and then in this pages, we'll create a new folder for every page, starting off with a dashboard, and then all the folders of the pages are going to have index.jsx file. So let's go ahead, create that. And in this index.jsx, we're creating a simple dashboard component, and we're gonna export that. In the inside component, I'm just gonna say dashboard just to show how it's gonna get displayed. And pages, always I'm doing export default. So export default dashboard. And then we'll make this like a default page. So in app.jsx as like the main entry of our application, I'm gonna import it. And removing all this extra code that we have here and replacing with our component. Yep, so let's create a new fragment and inside here place dashboard. Let's save this and make sure that it's getting loading. All right, let's update the dashboard now. Now let's create a component that we can put in the dashboard. So for the components in the source folder, I'm gonna create components folder. And for the elements that would be shared across different places of the app, I'll create like a common folder. So let's go ahead in this common folder, create a breadcrumb component. So breadcrumb is basically tells user where they are, like which pages they've come from, and they have an option to go back, and there's usually like several links. So once we have the file created, let's import link component. This one is coming from React Router module. Even though we haven't set up the routing, we'll set it up later. We'll use the link to create links. Next up, we have row, column, and breadcrumb item, which is part of Bootstrap. So React strap. And let's create a component. So constant breadcrumb. This will take in some props, and then let's return our div. So we want this to be on a row, and then inside the row we always have like a column. And in this case, we want the column to also take the full width of the row. So column equals 12. Then we have a div, and then we're gonna create an ordered list to where we would put these breadcrumb items. But first, let's add the header h4, and then we're gonna get this from props, and then props name would be breadcrumb item. And then next, another div, and in this div would be our list. So OL for ordered list. And let's copy breadcrumb item and create 2 of them here. Okay, once we have that, inside is where the link goes. So for now, we want to pass an URL. It would be just like the hashtag, and then inside the link would be the name of the link. So we would have two props title and breadcrumb item. Breadcrumb item would be like the current page the user is on, and then the title would be like a previous page. So in here, for the second link, let's update the name to breadcrumb item. Okay, before we move on to the styling, let's export this component and then import inside of our dashboard. So here we have breadcrumb and breadcrumb. Also, I'm going to import few components that we would need for styling from React Strap. So this would be container where we would wrap everything, row, column, and also we're gonna use these cards and simply the body of the card. So this from React Strap. And in here, instead of this, first let's create a container. So this container, we also want it to be fluid, so it just stretch out to the area that it would be available for it. And then let's create the breadcrumb. As we remember, it needs two props, title. This would be, let's do admin. And then the breadcrumb item itself would be, not the breadcrumb. This would be dashboard. So the current page that we're at. And the closing tag. Alright, so because we're using breadcrumb in link in the breadcrumb, we would have to wrap the part that we're using links inside router, but in this case I'm gonna wrap the whole application so we have access to router everywhere. And then first importing the needed components, and next up putting this inside here. Okay, so this is our breadcrumbs, and while we are on app.js X page, let's wrap our application inside, like the main content inside this container. So this divs, we're gonna later on use them for styling because we're gonna have a sidebar and also heading at the top. So this would be for all the content like that goes inside these two elements that I mentioned. So let's put dashboard in here, and then styling for this will, like for main content and page content, we'll add later on because we need to do some calculations. Anyways, now let's do styling for breadcrumb. So in general, as you probably already know, there's two ways when you're using libraries like Bootstrap to do styling. One either in the SAS files that we created, or another one using utility classes and directly inside the component. So just because we're not gonna have much styling on this one, I'm gonna do it inside components. So just giving like a class name, and then display on small, this would be flex. We also want align items center and justify content between. Let's this. Then for this H4 margin bottom, let's set it to 2 and size to 18. Then this would be, I'm just giving, this is not for styling, just a name, page title white. So on the right, we're gonna have, on the left, we're gonna have a title on the right we're gonna have like list of, and here let's do class name, breadcrumb, and margin 0. Now let's add another component to our dashboard. This would be a credit card component, and since it's specific to dashboard, I'm going to create in the dashboard folder. So card component.jsx, and let's create a React component. For easily creating React components, I'm going to use this shortcut that's coming from React Snippets extension. So it easily lets you create components. In this case, I wanted not the pure component, but functional. So Command-Shift-P, you get this comments like settings, and then you can search for snippets. So we are looking for functional components. It's probably that one. So RF, I'm going to delete this one. So RFC and press enter. And then the name is already selected for you, so you can change the name. So let's do card component. Next up, let's import card row and column from React rep that we're going to use here. From React strap. And let's update this div into a fragment and create card inside. After the card, we have a row and a column. So not indicating any number to the column, it would make column like full width. And in here we're gonna have, so credit cards have like information, right? And then for each piece of information, we're gonna have a new div. And then two parts, like two paragraphs, like the value and the title of the property. So let's just copy paste and update for every single one of like the fields. So card number, yeah, that would be some random numbers. Then we have another div for what date it's valid until, and then another one usually on cards is expiration date and CVV. Okay, now that we have some data in here, let's import, oh, by the way, this is the extension that I was using just now, if you wanna install it in your VS Code. So yeah, I'm going to go back to our dashboard page, which should be pages dashboard index.jsx. And in here, I'll import a credit card component. And for this one, we are going to create it on a new row. And then inside this row, for this one, we don't want it to take the full width. So we're going to create a column that has like the length of 4. So it'll take, in total columns are length of 12. So it'll take like part of it and put credit card comp, card comp here. Yeah, here it is. Now let's add some styling using utility classes, just closing this one out. So first, starting with card class name, we're gonna make overflow hidden. After that, text would be white because we're gonna change background color. For now, I'm gonna set it to primary, but then we'll make it gradient. Also border, we don't want this card automatic border. And then just give it a name, credit card container, so that we can apply more styling afterwards. And for each single one of like the field names, I'm gonna make font weight normal. So, and then for the field values, I'm gonna make them bold so that we are able to see better. As for the below, like the last three elements, I want them to be on like the same row. So let's just add some paddings, make these three elements together display flags, and then justify content in between so they'll like spread across the row. And adding also some paddings in between the other two rows that we have. Okay, now let's update some of the styling in our SAS file. So the name of the class for the credit card was credit card container, and let's indicate that the section styles would be for dashboard. So commenting out like the name of the page and then that credit card container. And in here, I'm gonna set background color. This background color would be linear gradient containing two colors that gradiently like blend in together. And then for the paragraphs, the margin usually is, I believe, 2.5 rem. And then in here, we're gonna set smaller like 0.5, and then we'll set 0.25. Okay, that looks better. Also, let's shift the text to the left. That would be also on paragraph, text align left. Since we just built the credit card portion, here I would like to mention how important security is when we handle these kinds of data, especially that it might affect us personally or our users. And a lot of engineers I've seen don't share data, for example, API keys which might be tied to payment systems or other environment variables securely. And that doesn't mean like sending through an email or even uploading to GitHub. It means using the password manager. Here I would like to present my favorite password manager, Nordpass, which I not only use for my projects and to share sensitive data among other engineers, but as you can see also for my personal information. I'll show you guys how I add a new credit card and share it with my teammates. So either in the credit card section or in the all items, I select new card, then enter like this is just a sample information for the credit card. So I'm gonna enter that information. So for example, let's say we're working on a project and we want to install something that's related to payment, or we just want this card to test out like a Stripe integration. Okay, let's save this, and once it's saved we can see the information and it's been listed as one of the credit cards. Now we can move it to a folder. I'm going to create a new folder and then we can either share it from there or share it as like a separate item. So for example, for the name for my project, create, and then we can see the folder in here. So let's go ahead and on the three dots on the settings on the right, we can press share and we can put the email of the person that we want to share this with. So putting in the email, we also have two different options for what rights they're gonna have. I'm gonna select limited one in this case and press share. It's as easy as that, and if you wanna try for yourself, you do get a 3-month free trial. Make sure to go to nordpass.com and use web decoded. And for the icons, as I mentioned, we're using Font Awesome. But to be able to set up Font Awesome, we need to import like their library and also the type of icons, in this case solid, that we'll be using. And then on their website, we can browse icons. I believe we can select them, like different kinds of icons, but the one that I'm using is like the type is solid. So in the filters here, yeah, that should be solid, and then we can search from their search bar. So for example, card, and we can close this filter out, and once we select the icon, it's gonna give us like the code for it, and we can just like copy that one. And library, I'm gonna initialize that also in our app.jsx file. So library add and then the name of the package, so the solid one that we imported. Now let's see how we add an icon going back to the dashboard page. in here importing the font awesome icon package, like not the package but the component itself, so we can pass the icon name. So font awesome icon, that's from Fort Awesome slash, not the Fort Awesome SVG, but React dash Fort Awesome. Okay, yeah, that one. And the way we'll use this icons is that once again we can select them from here, and then we will create like a mini widgets for some of the metrics and display them in cards. So let's first create, it's going to be like a list of widgets, so let's first create data for them. So constant reports and defining the fields. So it's going to have like 4 fields. First one is title, then we're passing icon class, that's to display the font awesome icons. And after that we're gonna have description followed by a %. So in description I'll just put some numbers in there. For orders it would be like a number, for other cases it would be maybe like the price or like revenue, and then 4% also like either positive or negative. And then I have the other 2, so in total I have like 3 reports. So I'll paste them in the values you can pass whatever you like them, but make sure the fields are matching as on the screen. And once we have the list of our reports, we can create here another column, and then in that column on one row we want to have this like 3 reports allocated equally. So column Excel equals 8, closing that one out, and then creating a row. And in here, let's take reports and then map them out. So in the map, we want report, and we also want index that we're gonna use for the key. And returning, we'll create like a card that will contain this report information. So card. But also we have to wrap the card in the column, so they take up like equal spaces, so we have like 3 columns, so MD would equal to 4. And when you're mapping things out, they need to have unique key, so key would be column plus and then the key that would be passed in the map. And here we have, now we can add our card. Class name, let's add the class name. Later on we can use that for styling, so that would be mini stats widget. And in here we're gonna go straight to the body, not adding like a card header. So in body we'll have display flex class, and inside here like 2 more divs. One would contain the title and the description, and the other one would be for icon. So flex grow, for this one it will take up meaning as much space as is left. And inside first we have a paragraph. Text muted, this should add like grayish color to our text. And font weight medium, and the title, so reported title would go here. And below it we have H4 with a description in it. So report.description. And let's add a class name, and in terms of styling, margin bottom would be 0 for this H4. And in the next, moving on to the next div where we have our icons. So the name of div container would be icon small rounded circles, and then background we'll set it to primary, and centering the icon inside this div, also just giving it a name, mini stat icon. And in here we'll create another span class which is gonna store the icon itself. So icon container, also rounded circle, and background primary. Now let's add the font awesome ones, and in the icon props of the font awesome icon we press report, and then the name was icon class. And we need to also append the library name, so that would be FA solid. And that should be it for the widget. One thing that we're missing here is the return statement. When we're mapping a list in like the curly brackets, we need to make sure that it is returning this like component inside. So moving that, putting it inside the return statement. Now we should be good for that one. Let's remove this extra column and put in here and save this. And let's load to see what it looks like. Okay, let's remove that extra semicolon and save it. Okay, this is it. So we will add some more stylings on the icons, right? Before we do the styling, let's add some variables here, so we can use those variables later on for this this component and then other components. So I'll add like few reusable things. For example, container background, I'm gonna set this to white, and then when we do later on the dark mode, it's gonna be easier to like change these variables and set to different values. Next up, I'm just gonna define some colors, and I'll do like one example first. So let's say color system, let's start with purple. And so we do the hash, like the color. And then the extension that I have installed on VS Code that's gonna like highlight the color. Now for like Bootstrap, just adding a color, we have to define this like colors variable, and then inside parentheses we have to say the color name and what the value should be like. So this is gonna pick up value from line 9. And now, as I'll do one more example for variants. If you want to see the full list of variants, you can check that on Bootstrap, but there's some examples, for example, primary, secondary, danger, success warning, etc. So for primary, I'm also gonna reuse purple. And then for defining those like theme colors, we create this variable, and then inside once again we say primary in quotes and then pass the value. Also, you noticed that this way we can reuse these names. For example, when we say bg-primary or bg- whatever, we include in theme colors. But sometimes Bootstrap also uses dash like RGB, like it generates class names. So if you want to generate those class names, then we would say theme colors RGB on, and then map loop. So we would go through all the theme colors and then also pick them and then turn them into RGB. So this might look a little bit complicated, but once like this is set up, you can just add the values, and I promise you then it would be easier to just use this colors, like set of colors anywhere you want throughout the application. So I am going to paste some of the others that I have defined. So that would be for adding some colors for color system, like the hashes. And then all the hashes that I listed here, I'm gonna also put them inside the list of the colors. And adding some more variants and including them in the theme colors. Okay, now let's go back to the styling of our widgets. So in here, we're gonna put the widget class name, which was mini stats width, and inside here the icon class name itself, mini stat icon. And starting off with icon styling, we're gonna have overflow hidden. And position, we'll set it to relative because we'll also create like before and after elements. That's going to be absolute, so the parent element position needs to be relative. And good thing about Sass is that we don't have to create all the inner childs that we're targeting on a separate line while marking the parents. We can just say and then before, after, add and another class, etc. So for those, and then separate them by comma. So before and after, they're gonna share content. This is for just like a diagonal line over the icon. And then when somebody hovers over that icon, this line would, like another line would like cross over, move. I'll show the effect. But then their position would be absolute. They're both like width and height would be for both of them same, 8 pixels and then 54. Background color container BG, which we created as a variable, and then setting opacity, setting position from the left, also transform rotation, the animation, and then from top how -5 pixels, and then transition timing, which would be 0.4 seconds. Now there's few like position of the after one is going to be a little different, so let's target after separately. So left, it would be a little bit further, and then the width, we're setting it to 12 pixels. Also, this would be the one with the transition. So 0.2 seconds. And now on hover, let's do hover effect. So on hover, our icon like after would change the position. So hover, and then we put once again the icon class name and the after. Oops. And let's do left 60 pixels. Now let's add styling for the container, like div class itself. So that was icon container. We're gonna align item center, so the icon inside is centered. Then we'll set background color to primary. Also the color inside, that would be color of the icon, container BG, so that's the, as we defined, white. Display flex, otherwise the items would not be aligned. Let's set font weight 500. Also height, we want it to be 100%, so the icon gets the full height. And justify content, as we did with align items, that's gonna be also centered. And as height is 100%, we also want width to be 100%. So it's like an equal ratio. And next on, we're gonna target the icon inside. This one, like icon small, will have set height and width of 3 rem. Okay, so few things I missed here. So here we want the RGBA value, and then for all the transitions, we want to add all here. And where else do we have transition here? Okay, let's save this, see what we have. So here it is, and here's the before after I'm talking about. If you can see like this line right here, and then as I hover over, there's another line coming from the position changing. All right, so we're about a little over half an hour. I think we have made great progress so far, and some of the things did take time to set up, but once we have all the important pieces in place, now we'll be able to build a lot of more like components and layout and charts pretty faster. All right, so the next part here we have our first row. For on the second row, we're gonna have charts. So let's get into some charts now. For charts, we are using this React.js wrapper for Apex charts, and it gives us the ability to build interactive, this like different kinds of visualizations in React. So for that, we already have the modules installed, and just looking at the documentation here, they have example option, but they have like way more options than that. And then if you're interested, you can also just learn more about Apex charts. So let's go back to our code, and for the first one, the round one is the one that we're gonna use, this one. And then I think if you press on it, you do get different demos. So let's see, this one's radial bar, and there's different ones. So yeah, we'll pick this one, and we can copy some of the options they have here, this, and update that. So they have that stored in the state, and let's create the component. So this would be for dashboard, new file, first let's import React Apex chart from React Apex charts, and then create our component, constant matrix component. Let's also import card from React wrap, and then wrap this into a card. So import this will be card, and then we'll add like some more data as well. So constant options equals this. So what we can do here is we can define series as a separate constant, and then another one where we have options. And then I think we also, let's see, so we have labels. Let's update this to be computer. So this would measure more like views. Let's say in the circle we're gonna have how many views are we getting in total, and then this would be all like the different categories. And another, I also want to add colors. The colors is an optional component. So we have, let's pick the four colors from our like color palette, so it's like matches what we have. Let's do purple, light blue, Cambridge blue, and one more. Let's just do the blue one. And for the series, I don't know if it needs to be included in the options. Oh, we passed it as a separate prop. Okay, so let's create React Apex charts. Options would pass, my caps lock is on, our options. series. And then this can be turned into, instead of constant, stored in a state or prop, something that gets updated. The bar would be like dynamic. Height, let's set it to 230, and then class name, let's do Apex charts. So this should automatically close. Okay, and then let's just do some information about the chart above it. First, wrapping this class name text centered. Let's include this one here as well, followed by h5, kind of left description of what this is, which would say views, and then div class name. This is more descriptions. So display, we want flex, and justify content center. And here let's have another header. So this one I want to be bigger than the other one because the number itself is more important. So class name, and then margin, make it 0, because right next to it we're gonna have a % sign, and then this one itself would be just a number of views. So let's make it 27K. Here we're gonna add an icon, and before we do that, let's wrap it in also a flex container that's gonna align items in the center. And so we are actually, center might not work because we're adding like a small triangle, like indicator of growth, or so let's do and instead, and padding 2. For adding icons, we need to import Font Awesome icon from React of Font Awesome. And yeah, let's add the icon here. And then the one that I picked is FA Solid once again, and FA Caret up. And color of this one, since this is up, I'm gonna make it green. And in the span, we're gonna have like % on like how many % it's up, and I want this color to also be green. So class name text would be success, because as you can see here, success variant has green as its value. So let's save this and import it into dashboard main files for metrics. Did I do dash export default? No. Export default metrics comp. Saving it, and metrics, now we should be able to see it. Great, and we'll add it below metrics comp here, below the card component. All right, let's test it out. So, here it is, beautiful. One thing that I want to change in here is the margins in between card components. So let's just apply margins and some of the styling to all of them. So that would be in app CSS. So far we've been doing dashboard styling, so card is more like a common thing. So let's say, okay, card. That's the class name of the card provided by React Strap. So let's do margin but for all of them 24 pixels, so it's consistent. I also want to add like a box shadow, so box shadow 0.25 1 point. This like indicates how far and like in which direction box shadow should go. And then RGBs about like colors, 18, 38, 69, then 3%. Okay. And I want to remove also border from like all of them. All right, that looks better. So now let's look at different kind of chart. This would be column chart. I'm still Apex chart like documentation, and this is the column chart that I'm talking about. Here we also get like sample. I wish I can scroll through this page, but as you can see for a little bit here, sample options that they have. So first we need to pass on series, that would be like data. In this case they have only one kind of data, probably gonna pass more than that, but yeah, series is an array, so it does take more objects. And then object has to be, the name would be like the title, as you can see, like inflation here, and then the data would be data points for every single one of like the division here. In this case we have month, and for the month we pass that as x-axis categories. Then there's some other things, for example format, how do you want function taking the value from the data to be calculated. In this case they have percentages, and then some more like styling related data, for example border radius, what height you want to for your bar to be. We want more like flexible options, so we're not gonna use like the fixed heights, which is like optional. And then things and labels you wanna enable or not. Okay, so first let's define our like data. For data, since this is a static one, we'll create a new file in the source folder, and then I'm going to create my data here. So for this, let's do constant period data, and then in the same format as I showed, I added these 3 objects, and then we are also gonna have as like points of references 12 months, so data array size should be 12. Okay, let's save the data and create the component. That would be dashboard, new file. This is a column chart, the JSX, and column chart. Okay, nice. We want as props to take, so here usually we either say props or we can destructure. So let's destructure, we will have 2 types of props, data colors and period data. And then we create like constant options as we did for the other kind of chart. And here I'll paste, I took the options example, why does it happen 2 times, from their like documentation, and I tweaked it based on my needs. For example, some of the like position, bottom, fill, also colors. This part would be dynamic. This will come from the props. We want labels to be shown. Our categories would be also month. We'll show this like x-axis, data labels enabled true, also bar horizontal yes, and then column width, this would be, it can be dynamic, so 15%. I do the rounded and shape. And let's, in here, I don't think we need anything else for this one. In the fragment, we have not imported the React Apex chart yet, so let's do that one and create it inside our JSX. So React Apex chart, Options, once again, we'll pass the options that we have, and for series we need to import this period data that we just created. So let's do that here. Import. I don't think I exported the data, so let's do this. Export period data. We might add some more data here, so I'm not gonna do a default export, and import period data from, so this would be actually it's, yeah, in source, and then so this would be actually passed by from the props. Yeah, so we can just copy the data here, and it's gonna be array, so that's what I'm doing, like I'm copying the array. So type is bar, and height we'll set it to 359, and class name, once again say Apex charts. And that should be it. So we have export default, and let's import this column chart into our index.jsx in the dashboard here. We'll also import the data. And this one is going to go below our, like, the statistics widgets that we had. So let's find, so those are here, and we'll add another row. And this one, the column would be full width. So column chart, then period data equals period data. Now let's do data colors as well. So here we'll have 3 colors because we have in our data, like, the array size is 3. So let's copy these colors from when we created the other metrics component, or actually we can just pick, we have them right here. So let's do purple. Next one, blue, and followed by light blue. Okay. So there's a red. I see that. Oh, I don't have ending tag. Okay. So yeah, this is our dashboard, and it's divided into 3 categories. Hovering over, we get like those highlighted, and the others like opacity applied. And we also see like the number if we hover over the bar itself, and the month. I'm gonna wrap this chart into a card, and then before we add any more elements to the dashboard page, let's start building some of the layout, like header, sidebar, and footer. So first, let's see wherever we have chart. Okay, and between. Okay, so for layout elements in the components, I'm gonna create a new folder, name it layout, and in here let's first start with a header. Header.jsx rfse. So instead of div, let's use HTML tag, which is header, and let's give it ID. This would be page top bar. In the header, we're gonna have a toggle, like a burger menu on the left side, and then on the right side we're gonna have some icons like user gear, and then we'll also later on add like a light dark mode switch. But first, starting off with the buttons that I mentioned, div, class name, navbar, header, class name. So we want this to be flex, width to be 100, stretch out fully, and justify content between, since we're gonna have one set of like buttons on one side, another one on the other side. And then for two sides we have to create two divs. So div number 1, let's do button. We won't have on click, let's just console log menu toggle, and let's do class name. This would be button small one, some padding, size, and then let's say that it's a header item. And inside the button itself, we're gonna have an icon. So let's import font awesome icon and put it here. Font awesome icon, and then this one would be FA solid. And FA bars is the name of the icon. And that's it for this side. Why is it giving me? Oh, never said from. Okay. But yeah, moving on to the second div. Here we'll have a little more of buttons, so let's give it class name header navigation, and first one is also FA solid, FA user, and then class name, let's add padding because next to it will be another icon, so we want some space in between, and let's copy this one and just change the name of the icon right below it. So this would be gear. We have export default, perfect. And before we do styling in our CSS file, let's create a variable for padding, because for like header, and then we'll use it in multiple places. Like we're gonna give almost the same padding to the container for the main content below it. So maybe after the theme we can be like container padding, and this would be 24 pixels. Okay, now let's go to the CSS. And here creating another section specifically for layout. And starting off with navbar header. This would be display flags. Justify content, space between. Align items, center. Margin would be 0. And auto. Height, we'll set it to 70 pixels. And then, so padding, this is where we use the variable that we just created. So 0, and then we do calculations, container padding multiplied by 0.5. Then we have 0 and another 0. Now let's do styling for like the whole header section. So page, top bar. We know a few things about this, so that the position has to be fixed. Also, top is 0, it's all the way up there. The right side we have 0. On the left side, we'll add also sidebar after this, so that would be 250 pixels, but maybe sidebar length, sidebar width, let's also describe here. So 50 pixels, so let's save it, and this would be sidebar width. Left is this. The index, we do want this to be almost always visible, and so background color of this, we would do container PG, but here we're missing $sign. And the box shadow, I kind of want the same one as I added on the card, so I'm just gonna copy from here. That would be for the styling for header. Let's also quickly create footer, which would be a simple component. So in layout, new file, footer.jsx. Let's make this full width. We will use, instead of wrapping in the div, footer tag here, and let's import container row and column, the React strap, and first one we will have container that is fluid, followed by row. In this case we'll only have one row, and then container. So here, 2 containers, each one, single one of them would be equal length, so let's do 6. And the first one, let's get new date, so current date, so it's like always up to date. And the function get full year, we just need the year, and this is where copyright sign goes, and like the name. Container, this is not container, this is column. And this should close here. And let's update this one as well. Our next column. Here, let's create div, class name. We'll have some text, so do text styling, small, and towards the end. none. Then on small display block, I'll paste the text, and that's it. So we have export default. Okay, great. Let's import both header and footer in our .jsx file. Close this, import header. Footer. Okay, and they would both go above router because actually they can be inside the router, and then when we define the routes, they would be above the route. So here we have header, here we have footer. Okay, that's our header element, and this is our footer. Once we do the sidebar here, we're gonna update the styling of the main, so that would create like a padding here and also like push this out all the way down. So yeah, let's start with the sidebar. Sidebar I'm gonna divide into two parts. One would be like the parent container, and another one would be like the menu items itself. So let's do sidebar container .jsx and our functional component. At the top, I'm also going to import link because the logo that we'll add here would be clickable, and then this one comes from React Router DOM. And let's clear this, give it a class name menu, and let's create two more divs inside here. The first one would be for the logo, so class name navbar brand box and adds margin, and here is where we're gonna wrap the logo in the link. So link should have two, and then this will go to like index page, which is like this. And let's do some class names. So usually inside link, like logo are in most cases images. I just don't have the actual logo, so I'm just gonna type it in, but feel free to an image if you have one, or maybe SVG. So web decoded. And this is our first div. So let's do our second one. So data, this would be simple bar, and class name, we want the height to be 100%, and then this is where the menu would go. That we'll create it next also here. So this one I'm gonna just name sidebar .jsx, create a component. We're gonna need link over there as well, so might as well import it, and we will also have a bunch of icons. So font awesome icon, React font awesome. Cool. Now this one as well, we want full height. The sidebar menu. And let's create an unordered list that would list like the menu items. So class name, we want to list unstyled, so without the bullet points, and let's say ID equals side menu. So first item, we will just have the title of the section. In this case, we only have one section, but later it could be added like more sections. So class name to identify that this is the title, menu title, some margin, and same amount of padding, and then after the title we're just gonna have like the actual navigation buttons. So those are clickable. They would be links to, for example, I would do the first one, type it out, users, class name. This is also menu item, some padding, text, we want it to be small, 0 margin vertically and then horizontally 4. Also like this, display flex and align item center, because this one is gonna also have like an icon inside. That's why we want everything to be centered. So div class name, menu peel, and then we're gonna wrap the icon inside this peel and later on add some border and stuff. So font awesome icon equals fa solid. There's an icon for users. Of course, I'll use that. Here goes the title, span, users. So in here I took this like menu item and pasted in multiple times just by like tweaking few of the things. So for example, like the name, this one I made email, and then I updated the icon, so only like 2 things need to be updated for like each, and then the of course the URL. So yeah, you can do the same. I just did this to create the list, and let's now import our sidebar inside of the sidebar container and paste it in here. Okay, now we need our sidebar in app.js JSX. Okay, per usual we import first, so we're gonna import the sidebar container and place it below the header. Let's save this and let's do some styling right now on our sidebar. So that would go in the layout, and we can start with the menu item. So border radius for the rounded corners, let's do rem, and then let's target our container for the icon, some padding 0.625, text align center, and then for the background color, so container background. So we want border radius of this one to be 0.5 as well. Justify content center, same goes for the align items. So display, we want flex for this justify and align to be applied, and then setting the equal amount of width and the height. Some margin on the right, that would be 0.5 rem, and box shadow, let's use same one as our some of the other components have. Position is relative, and then the z-index, we also want this to set to 100 and missing comma here. Let's change color on the active one, the active, let's set background color to body background, and for the menu title we're just gonna add the same padding as other parts of the like buttons of the menu have. And that should be it for the sidebar. Let's also do some footer styling here. Bottom, we want it to be 0. Padding, we need to calculate this kind of like the same way as we did with the header, and then later on we would do with the main container. So this would be, what was the variable name? Container padding. And then times, let's make it 75. So other parts of the position would also be 0. Color, this one we don't need to define. We're gonna only use this color probably like here. 88D on the left side. So this would also be the width of the sidebar, and that was container padding. Thought we just created it and never used it. Yeah, so sidebar width. Then height, I think same one as we have for header, or maybe just a little bit less, 60 pixels. Then we have logo. This I'll just make font weight bold and justify content center. Font T. As for the header navigation, which was our set of icons, on the right I'll do display flags. I might have already done this inside the component, but justify content center. Alright, let's see what we have. Oh, interesting. The menu is moved all the way. Let's see, why is that? Sidebar menu. Oh, interesting. Root. So this is probably styling that might have been left from some of the default styles. So let's go find it. Index CSS, we deleted that. Oh, so this one. Yeah, I'm gonna also delete this stylings. Oops. Yeah, actually that's how it should be. And then the menus hidden because now we have to do the styling for the main content itself. So let's go ahead, do that next.
Okay, so for the main content, margin left once again would be the sidebar width, and then when the sidebar is going to be collapsed, then it would be 70 pixels. As for the page content, we're going to set the padding, and this would be based on calculations of 70 pixels, which is like height of header, and then container padding on the sides, and that would be like multiplied by 0.75.
Okay, now let's see what we have. This is why we had to calculate like the padding of the main container. So as you can see at the top, we have to take into consideration the header, and on top of that we have to add like this little height here that is like the padding for container, and then in between also on like vertically we want the header and the main content to have also like same size paddings, and then in between it and the footer. So I don't see styles applied to the footer. Let's go back, and also as you can see here, I think when I removed default classes I also removed padding from the card. So we're gonna add those, look at those two things first. Because footer is not a class, it's already a tag, and then wherever we have card, we had to rem. Okay, now let's implement dark mode, and for that we need to have a switch and some kind of place where we can store. So this is perfect use case for context, because once we wrap our application in the provider context would be available to like any child. So for that, let's create a new folder inside source component where all our contexts are going to go. So context, and then new file that would be theme JSX, and then in JSX we're going to need a few things from React. First one would be create contents, then we would also need a state, and I think, yeah, we don't need use effect, so let's do that. So first constant our context name, so that would be theme context, and we initialize it by calling the function create context. Once we have that, let's create provider that would be shared. So export constant theme provider, and this would take in the children. And then in here also we need to store the state, whether the mode is dark or not. So set is, this would be is dark, and let's by default do false. And then we also need a function to toggle our theme. So this won't take in anything, it would just update the set is dark value, and then it would set it to opposite to what currently is. And then constant theme, we can return like a value. So for example, if it's dark, return dark, and then we're going to use this as a class name to apply our stylings, and then if not, just nothing, and return, this is where return theme context dot provider. Whatever children would go under the provider would have access to values, which we're gonna define here. So value takes in an array, and then we'll pass theme is dark just in case we can have that, and we also want to pass our toggle theme function, so we can use that on a button to toggle the theme, and then inside we display the rest of the children. Okay, so that's export constant, great. Now let's make use of our context. First, let's import it into the header, so that would be in components layout header. So we also need use context for React, because like context technically is a hook, so we're going to take use context and put our context that we defined from the theme. So theme context, and then that's coming from and in here we destructure all the like values that we want to get. So let's say if we wanted all the values, would say theme is dark, but we don't have to then toggle theme. So we would actually use toggle theme to pass it to a button, and then use context. Okay, and then we said that we were gonna do that one in here, header navigation. So let's create that button, and class name would be theme icon, margin 4, and on click we pass toggle theme, and then here based on what like theme is set, we're gonna display the icon. So if it's dark, let's do font. In both cases we're gonna display font awesome, but if it is dark we're gonna display this as sun, and we don't need the padding, we're gonna apply the padding to theme icon itself. And then if not, our condition would be to display moon. Yes. Now we should apply this to like the class name depending on whether it's dark or not to our application. We can do this in two ways. One is either going to app.jsx, and same way we like can access these fields, we can also import the context here, and then in the, let's say to the application, in the class name, pass theme as a class name. And then another option would be, but then inside here we can apply to the application, but we don't have access to body. So I do want to apply to the body part of the HTML. So for that, we can also do that directly from this theme by adding useEffect and making isDarkValue dependency. So in here, this would run every time isDark, like the theme gets updated. Dependency is dark, and based on that we can apply a class theme to the body. Now only thing we have left in terms of implementing fully the dark mode is updating styling, and it may sound like a lot of work, but with the setup that we have, it's pretty simple as long as like all the colors that you'd like to invert. So we applied dark class name. So same thing in here, says selector.dark, and then inside here we're gonna update any of this colors from here or just from Bootstrap that we want updated and only used in the dark case. And after we do that, we need to make sure that we are inside here once again importing Bootstrap, and before that all the variables go in. So I'm gonna start updating few variables. So for example, container background, I'll do, and if you use some class here but then you use in the styling and it's not defined here, and then we are on the light mode, then the CSS will throw the error. So make sure whatever you have here and whatever is used here, you also have it in the other modes. Yeah, now I'll define some of the other classes and let's see how it looks. I just realized I have not wrapped the application inside of theme provider, so we can't really use until we do that. So let's go to main.jsx, and in here we can import theme provider from context and then put app inside it. So this would go here. And inside the theme, we do export the theme provider, but we also want to export theme context. And while we are here, let's update some of the logic in useEffect. So we don't want every time to add a class. So let's see how we handle two scenarios when if it's dark or if it's not dark. So if it's dark, let's add a class name which we defined it as dark, and then in the else statement we're gonna remove that. Okay, so here we have the moon icon. This gets updated to the sign icon, and let's see what's happening. So we do have body class dark, and then, but for some reason the stylings are not getting updated. Let's see. Yeah, we have to add this variables with prefixes. So I'll do one example and then continue updating some of the other styles. So variable prefix, and then this is in. So for example, body bg. So in a similar manner as we did the theme, I'm going to create another context about sidebar menu being expanded or not. And then I'll also apply the toggle is expanded to the button for menu that we have in the header. Sex. we can pass this class, for example, div class name, and we can have menu class. Okay, so when collapsed is applied, our content and then the footer move to the left, we have to add the same thing for the header, and then I'm also going to conditionally show, like just show icons on the left. So let's start with header. Okay, in the sidebar container, we can access our menu theme. And then based on that, we'll add some display or hide the sidebar names from here. So we can just access it from the sidebar. Okay. So menu class returns string. We actually need is collapsed, so I think we have to wrap this in curly brackets. Okay, and then based on that we'll display, so not, so if it's not collapsed, then we display it. You can also create like separate component for this like menu item, so it would be, we don't have to like manually update everything separately. And then here we have to actually pass the context in order to access it. Okay, let's see what we have here. So we can also update the logo and then the footer. So in this sidebar container, I think that's where the logo is. So in here we also need to know if it's collapsed, and then we also need to copy like the context, then class name, text decoration, I believe it's none. Ideally we would have like smaller, I guess, image for the logo to display on, but for this one I'll hide it. And the footer, so let's see what's okay. So left instead of this one. It's not like margin left, it's just left value. Then let's change also footer position to, do we have position set? I don't think so. Absolute. So bottom, we want it at the bottom, okay. Okay, so now it's the bottom. Great. Now let's get into the routing. So routing we'll set up in app.jsx. By default, we're just showing dashboard on like our home page, but now we're gonna wrap page content inside of routes. So anything that changes when the page changes goes inside the routes, and then header, sidebar, footer, they stay outside of it. And then in here we define routes. So route path, this would be if we want our home path to be our like index page to be dashboard, then we say element equals to, and then we pass dashboard in here. Close this out. And for example, if we wanna add more pages, we can update, let's say like users, and then inside pages folder we create like new folder, and then inside like users we create also index.jsx file, and then pass that component in here. So let me remove dashboard and let's quickly do this for demo purposes. So index.jsx, and then so that would be users. Okay, so here if we go to users, oh, we never, then import users. So here it is, users, and then we can go back to here. We have routes. Now I'll add some more elements on this. I'll add another row in here, and that would have like 3 columns and 3 components as well. First one would be sort of like an add. It's gonna have like an image gradient on top of it, and then read more some information. Then we'll have like activity container showing like numbers for the activity, also city rankings, and then the progress bars. So let's get right into those components. Okay, if you followed the tutorial all the way to the end, I just want to say that I'm very thankful for you watching this video, and don't forget to sign up for Nordpass using my code WebDecoded. Alright, I'll catch you guys in the next video.